Lori the Crafty Girl here, and recently I've been getting a number of requests for patterns that are gender neutral and size inclusive. And the great news is that is a passion of mine, both of those. So today's video, I decided to kind of combine the two requests into one and show you how you can actually create a garment and adjust the size as you need to. Now, this can seem a little complicated, right? One of the things I will tell you as a knitting machine pattern designer, I typically work from a sample that is smaller. So in fact, this right here is a sample that I recently made, and it fits about an extra small to small. And there's a couple of reasons that I build my patterns from the small size up. Number one, that's my size. It's much easier to design a pattern when you can actually see it on a body, see how it fits. I have a number of mannequins in many different sizes, excuse me, in many different sizes, and that also helps me see how the clothing's going to lay. So the first reason is because it's my size. Second reason is it works up a lot faster. And when you're creating patterns, you're going to go through a lot of different iterations and styles and trials and errors. So to waste less yarn and also to complete those patterns a little bit faster, it makes sense for me to work from a smaller size. However, something like this in particular is so easy to convert to a gender neutral look as well as additional sizing. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So typically when I do this in my brain, I work out all the math and I figure it all out, and I realize it's complicated, but it's not complicated. And so I spent a good amount of time going through my process and writing it all down and figuring out what would be the easiest way to share with all of you how to actually convert a pattern to a different size. And whether that is to accommodate for maybe larger shoulders or maybe just a larger fit in general, or even a smaller fit, that works as well. The way to do this is with something like this. So I created this little worksheet. It's called, I think I'm going to change the name. Originally, it's called the Project Planning Worksheet. And essentially what I did is I broke my brain down. Into all the questions that I need to know and need to ask in order to convert a pattern into a different size. And I'm going to show you how it works. So essentially all you're going to be doing is entering some information. What is the total width of the project? What is the total length of the project? You are going to have to do a little bit of work, however. And this work comes in the form of creating a gauge swatch. Now, don't freak out if you've never heard the term gauge swatch, or if you haven't worked with gauge swatches, or if you're, someone who is anti-gauge swatch. This is super simple. It really is. And in order to convert those patterns, it's going to be a necessary step. So what this means is to create a gauge swatch, you're essentially going to create a sample, and then you're going to measure the amount of pins and stitches and rows and all those things that we need for knitting machines to create the size of your garment. And so one way you can do that is you can create something like this. So this is a very simple tool. I made this out of upcycled cardboard. That's it. You can buy them online. I saw some people are selling them. Awesome. Support their small business. I'm all about supporting fellow small businesses. But if you want something super simple, just use cardboard like this. This is a 4x4 with a 2x2 inch square in the center. That is all this is. Each of these boxes down here, these are all just 1 inch. So this essentially, it's called a gauge swatch ruler. So if you wanted to search online for something, you could also use a piece of paper. I mean, anything really that you have like this. And what you're going to do is you're going to end up knitting some swatches with your knitting machine. With the yarn that you intend on using. And it's very important that you use that yarn that you're going to be using, because if you maybe change to a different yarn, it can have a different look. So let me show you. All right, so here are two examples of swatches, and how I created these. I made both of these on the Addy 22 pin, again, working from smaller, just to save on yarn and to make it go a little bit faster. And because I'm doing panels, I did 19, so you can do a total of 19 stitches, and then I did 19 stitches by 19 rows. If you're actually doing gauge swatches for like knitting or anything like that, I think the recommendation is to do at least 50 rows or something like that. I haven't found that necessary for knitting machine patterns, but you do whatever is best for you. So for me, I just typically do the amount of stitches and then do the same amount of rows. And then that gets me the 2x2 that I need to measure my stitches. So both of these, you can see they're two different yarns, but I did the exact same number of stitches and the exact same number of rows. And already you can see the huge difference, right? Like the sizing difference is there. So it's really important that you test with the yarn you're going to use. You can also just use a garment. So for example, with this top right here, if I was going to use this Caron Simply Soft and Vintage Speckle is what this is. If I was going to use this, instead of doing another swatch, I could just, you know, do a gauge swatch on what I'm wearing. Same thing with the other top, because if this is the same yarn I'm using, you're probably going to get similar results. And all you end up doing with this is you put it, oh, by the way, another tip I have for you to make it easier is to steam or wash your swatches and get them in that state of actual use. So if they are fresh off the skein, it's not going to feel the same as if you had washed it and steamed it and lived in it. So you definitely want to make sure that you go that extra step. Because I will tell you, this one has been steamed and it's going to give me a different gauge swatch than the top that I just showed you, because that one is worn. That one has been lived in and it definitely has a little bit more give. And you do want to create your items based on what it will stretch into. But again, this is all personal preference. So to do a gauge swatch, again, so simple. You're going to just pop it right here, and then you're gonna go with the V's of the yarn. So you line it up here so that you can see the V's at the bottom and then V's on the side, and then you just count how many stitches across, right? Those are your pins. How many pins across are gonna fit in a 2x2 square? And then you do the same thing on the rows. How many rows does it take for a 2x2 area? You take those numbers and you put them in the worksheet, and the worksheet tells you what you need to do to convert this to the math that you need to adjust your pattern. So anyway, this is a lot of talk in the intro. If you're interested in content like this, please subscribe. I do a lot of content around whatever pops into my brain, really. Right now, and for the last year and a half, it's really been around working with yarn and knitting machines and pattern making. But you never know. I listen to all of you, so if you have a suggestion like this video, I am more than happy if I can find the time to do it for you. So I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so much for coming to my channel and giving me all of that support. So without further ado, let's figure out the project that we're gonna do, and I'll show you how to use the worksheet. Okay, everybody, I enlisted the hubs. Say hey, B.
Hello. So
this is Bill, my husband of 21 plus years, and he has agreed, or he's excited for me to make him a top for him to wear. We are going to use this right here is going to be our base, and I'm actually going to make him a nice little camp shirt, a button-down collared shirt. So I asked him what colors he would like, and this is where the inspiration is going to come from. So he is a huge sports person. And tell us why you chose this item.
I like the colors.
There you have it. He likes the colors. Cool. So what I'm going to do right now is take a few measurements. Like I mentioned, I need to measure, some of his measurements. I need to know how wide I need to make this, as well as how long I need to make this. So I'm going to take that measurement right now from him. I'm going to add it to the worksheet, and then we'll go from there. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so I have my measurements, and now let's figure some other stuff out. All right, now first of all, I am using a plastic sheet. That way I can reuse this. Great way to save paper, and then I can put my measurements in my project book that I have. I actually have a project journal. If you are interested, a knitting machine journal, or on Etsy, you can support the channel by purchasing that. It looks something like this. And then you have more project planning sheets in here. You can put all of your notes on different projects. And then if you have other things you want to keep in here, so you can get one of these. It's a downloadable PDF that you can get right on Etsy. All right, so again, reusable. So our total project width in inches. So we took that measurement across the widest part, which for him, it's going to be 20 inches. So we're going to say 20 inches. Then we're going to divide that number by 2, which gives us 10. Super simple math. And then we have project length in inches. So when I took the measurement, it was 27. If you ever have an odd number, it might make more sense to round up. In this case, I'm going to stick with 27, but then you have to do a little bit more complicated math, which this divided by 2 is 13.5. So that's all the information you're going to enter at the top. Now we need to work on this gauge swatch detail. And as I showed you before, we're going to use a 2x2 swatch, and we're going to count the number of stitches horizontally, or number of pins per 2 inches, and the number of rows vertically. Let me show you. And again, this piece has already been steamed. And we're going to take our little swatch gauge. Now our gauge swatch, I always say it backwards. So I do recommend putting it in a space, not at the top, not at the bottom, not on the sides. This is why if you want to make a bigger swatch, you certainly can do that. But you want to line up the V's. So I'm looking for the V's right here. So I want those to line up, and then I want the V's to line up at the bottom as well. And we don't want to have any halves. We definitely want to make sure that they are whole. So you might have to adjust it just a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is showing that we have 6 stitches per 2 inches. So this is what this says. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 stitches per 2 inches. So we're going to add that number. Okay, so that is 6. But now we need to do the vertically, or the number of rows. Again, you just want to make sure everything is stretched out as it normally would be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's about 10. Okay, so now that we have all of that information, we're going to do some more calculations. Okay, so we're going to multiply B, which is 10, by E, which is 6. So 10 times 6, don't even need a calculator, that is 60. And then we are going to have total number of rows for length is D, which is 13.5, times F, which is 10. So I do need a calculator for that. And that's 135. So this is telling me that we will now need 60 pins if we wanted to make this full top, and then we would need 135 rows to make sure we get to the right length. Now, you may wonder, well, what happens if it's 60? Because we don't have a circular knitting machine that has 60 pins on it. So what do you do? Well, I have a little note here that just says if the number of pins exceed your machine's capacity, just split it into multiple panels. That's all you have to do. So in this case, we would do, or what I would think would make the most sense, would just to split this right down the middle, because this is a button up anyway, and we're just going to have 2. So this pattern is very simple. It's 2 rectangles, just like this, that are going to be equidistant. Equidistant, that's not the word I'm looking for, that are going to be the exact same size, okay? So if we did a panel here that is 30 pins, and we did a panel here that is 30 pins, that will give us that length, especially for the style that I'm looking for, to go to my husband's shoulders. And then this 135 rows each will give us the length that we're looking for using this yarn right here. Again, if we were using a different yarn, you'd want to use a different gauge swatch. So again, you're getting a nice first look into my brain. So this number was wrong. We need to reconfigure this. And the reason being, again, looking at the project that we're making, 30 makes sense because each of these, we want it to be 30 on both sides. So the 60 inches here, or the 60 number, makes sense. But the total number of rows does not make sense because, I mean, it did make sense. It was 135, right? Okay, so if it's 135, that is just that's from his shoulder down to his waist. So that would be here to here, right? So if we did that, that's 135. But remember, we have to account for the back of the garment. So if you can guess what we're going to do next, we now need to multiply this by 2 because we need, you know, to fold this in half. So we need that to be the exact same. So that's going to give us 270 rows. Okay. So for this project to make for the hubs, to personalize this or customize this to his measurements, we are going to do 2 panels. Each of those panels are going to be 30 pins each. Okay, so I'm going to be using a 46 Addy king size. And then we are going to do 270 rows a piece. Now, we haven't figured out our color scheme or anything like that. That's going to be the next step. But we just needed to figure out our pattern first before we can even dive into colors and all of that. But at least we now know exactly what we need. Now, let me show you another example using a different size. We'll use my curvy model. I think she's a size 12. Her name is GirlyGrrlStyle. It's a family name. So let's do this one more time using the additional size, just so that you can see what that looks like again. All right, so here we are in the studio. Sorry, the sound is probably going to be really awful because this is truly a studio. There's no carpet or any sound dampening, so sorry, the sound is probably awful. But anyway, this is GirlyGrrlStyle, and we're going to take GirlyGrrlStyle's measurements. Again, every body is going to be different, so your measurements will definitely vary. In this case, we'll start just like we did with Bill. For this particular model, what we need to account for when we're taking those measurements is there is going to be a little bit more room that we'll need in the front of the garment. Obviously, depending on your body shape, there may be a little more room here, so we definitely want to account for that. So we're just going to measure it again from the shoulder. In fact, we could, another way to do this is just, if you have a long enough tape measure, is to just go from front to back. Okay, so you can do it this way as well, instead of having to figure out the math that I almost forgot to do. So in this case, if I want this to hit here, but it's probably going to be more about here, let's line that up correctly and account for that here. So this I would probably make 48 inches. So we'll say 48 inches for the length, and then the width, we want to go to the widest point. So what did I just say? 48, and then we will come over here. 48 by, let's do 20. I want to give a little bit of extra space. So this would be 48 by 20 inches for this shape right here. So let's put it in the worksheet. We'll use a different color for this one. So the total project width, let's see. So the total project width was 20. Oh, same size. So we have 20 there. Project length, this actually is 48 here. And then we're going to divide that. And that gives us 24. Our swatch gauge is exactly the same if we were going to use the same yarn. And so now we will figure out, this is going to be the same number. So we're still going to have 2 panels at 60 pins. And then for this, we're actually going to have D, which is 24, times F, which is 10. And that would be 240 rows. So for Bill, we are going to do, we have a total of 60 rows, so that gives us those 2 panels, like I said, at 30 pins a piece. And then we are going to do 270 rows. He is taller, so we are accounting for that. And then for GirlyGrrlStyle, we are going to have as well 2 panels, and then we're going to do 240 rows. So that's all there is to trying to figure out the pattern, especially for this basic design, just doing a button down, really cool camp shirt. And there are ways you can customize it with Bill's. I'm going to add a collar. I'm going to add sleeves. For GirlyGrrlStyle's, you could do the same thing. So lots of ways you can customize it. And you can even do that with colors. So, for the yarn that I'm using for Bill's, I actually already had him go pick it up at Joann's, so I'll show you the color scheme. I actually went to the Seattle Kraken website and found the hex codes for the colors. So this is going to be the color story. There is one more color as part of this. So here are all the colors I'm going to be using for Bill's button-down shirt. These are all the Karen Simply Soft brand. So the same brand that I already did a gauge swatch for this. Now, if you want to get really technical, I should do a gauge swatch for every single skein because some of them might be a little different. However, I'm not going to do that. It's not that imperative because the knit will stretch, it'll adjust as necessary. As long as I do make sure that I have enough space in the shoulders and enough space in the length, we should be fine. So I'm going to go with what I've already figured out for the pattern. Now, the cool part, the fun, creative part is what you now get to do with your color story. So now you can adjust this however you want. I may not use all of these colors, but I did want to make sure that I was covered just in case. So the primary color is this dark, like this one I think is called Country Blue. I think that's what this is called, dark country blue. So this is going to be the primary color. So we have this. Good, I got 2 skeins of this. This like robin's egg is their secondary color, and I really like the way those two look together. This one I think is light country blue. This one they showed as like an accent piece. So I may use this in here. And then I love the red. So all 3 of these together work so nicely. It's such a cool combination. Now is just the design and how I want to put it together. So that's all there is to adjusting your pattern and how you would go about doing that. I know this is a quick video, so if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to pop those down in the comments. I do respond as quickly as I possibly can. Also, you can support the channel. Go purchase the worksheet over on Etsy. Also, check out any of the other patterns that I have over there. Also, if you like the video and subscribe, that supports me as well, and it always encourages me to keep going because YouTube is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I do love it though, and I appreciate every single one of you for stopping by and watching the video. Also, stay tuned. I will actually do a tutorial for how to make the button-down top that I showed you. Also, this pattern for this cozy cardigan is already out, and I will link this video down below. You can actually just take this pattern from the video and then make it without sleeves, and you'd be able to create the same kind of button front top if you wanted to. And again, my brain starts going crazy because there's so many different ways you can customize it. So that is it, everybody. Thank you so much for your time today and coming to my channel. And until next time, see ya!